Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm Rockin' Robbie Billups, and it's time for the weekly comic book review. That's right, everybody. Thanks for checking out the video. I am Rockin' Robbie Billups. This is the weekly comic book review. It's the show I read a lot of comic books and I let you know what I thought about them, and we always start with a pick of the week. And this week's pick of the week, Avengers Twilight, issue number 6 from Marvel Comics. This is written by Chip Zdarsky with artwork by Daniel Acuna, and it has been a pleasure and a delight to read this year. I really do feel like some of Marvel, they're starting to really do a turnaround right now. Between the Ultimate books, between things like Avengers Twilight, they're making some right decisions, and there's more good quality content coming out in the first half of this year than there was all of last year, in my opinion. But Avengers Twilight is at the head of all of that. I have loved this book. It was initially touted as kind of like the Dark Knight Returns for Captain America and the Avengers, and it's not quite that, right? Maybe if you take in the idea that it's set in the future, Captain America's in retirement, it's about him coming out of retirement, sure, narratively, plot-wise, it's kind of got a similar kind of vibe to it, right? But Dark Knight Returns was something that revolutionized comics, that changed the industry. Avengers Twilight isn't quite that to that scale, but maybe for where Marvel is right now, it is kind of like a mini Dark Knight Returns effect for Marvel. We need more things like this. This is a perennial, evergreen book that will stay on shelves, that can sell for years and years and years. So let's just see if Marvel can keep it in print. But let's talk about issue number 6. This is the final issue of Avengers Twilight. Always intended to be 6 issues. A story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And a story with consistency. Daniel Acuna has been the only artist to touch this book. There wasn't a fill-in. There wasn't a moment where the schedule didn't work out. They waited until it was ready, and then they put it out. And this book has been fantastic, right? The artwork by Daniel Acuna is so freaking solid. The story moved at a breakneck pace. There was a moment, I think it was around issue 3 or 4, I was like, man, we're really moving fast and forward in this story. But when you look at the structure of it, it all worked perfectly together. I think Chip Zdarsky might be better at these like one and done, self-contained kind of stories. And it's not tied into any kind of continuity or anything like that. So this, like I said, is something you can read 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and it will still be relevant. It will still feel fresh, 100%. Chip Zdarsky did a great job of taking these characters, aging them up a little bit, putting them up against an unconquerable force, and then showing that struggle, that drive to move forward and win the day. I loved this book. I thought it was absolutely astounding all the way through, and they completely nail the ending. And that's something that a lot of comics don't really do so well these days. Like, they got a good setup, and then they meander around, and then they don't wrap up very satisfactorily, right? But this one absolutely did. This was a top-notch book. I know that a lot of people have been loving it, but trust me, this book is amazing. If you missed out on Avengers Twilight, there will be a trade paperback coming soon. You definitely want to check that out. We got the Hulk in this issue, a big, grand final battle. All of it feels earned. All of it feels perfectly led up to, and all of it feels incredibly satisfying. This was such a great book, and we need more stuff like Avengers Twilight from Marvel Comics. Seriously, Marvel, if you're listening, we need more books like that, because it worked all the way through. For 6 issues, it never let up, and it just kept ramping up the tension, I should say, and it's got an incredible payoff. So Avengers Twilight, number 6, that's your pick of the week. And another kind of book that's really helping Marvel turn the corner is Ultimate Spider-Man. Ultimate Spider-Man number 5 is here. Issue number 4, Marco Checchetto was not on the artwork, and it was just a big conversation. And I was kind of critical about the book. Maybe in hindsight, maybe when we look at everything pieced together, it will fit a little bit better. But as a single issue, it didn't really work for me as well as issues 1, 2, or 3. Issue number 5, though, works. It does work. The only problem, Marco Checchetto is not here on the artwork. And the artist is fine. It's decent. It's okay. I believe it's the same artist from the last issue, David Messina. The art is fine, it's capable, but there's a texture that is missing from Marco Cicchetto. Marco Cicchetto brings in a certain grit and texture and value to this book that just can't be mimicked by somebody like Messina. It's kind of like when Chip Zdarsky on his Batman run, you got Jorge Jimenez and it's popping on all cylinders. Then you bring in Mike Hawthorne. Not saying that Mike Hawthorne's a bad artist, but not an artist you want to put up right next to Jorge Jimenez. The same thing with Messina here. It's not an artist you want to put up right next to Marco Cicchetto. If this was his book, he was doing his own thing, maybe it would work better, but there is a little bit of a disconnect as the reader because I really want that Marco Cicchetto artwork. But the story made up for it. Jonathan Hickman crafts a great tale. So what we have in issue number 5 is we're going back a little bit. We're filling in the gaps and the holes of information about Harry Osborn, how he becomes the Green Goblin, how he winds up finding out Peter Parker is Spider-Man in this new Ultimate Universe, and why he decides to go up against the Kingpin. So it flashes back, catches us up on his story, and then has a really great, solid ending that brings us back up to the modern day. Ultimate Spider-Man number 5, I really liked that book. Then we got Hellverine, issue number 1. This is from Benjamin Percy with art by Julius Ota. I'm not familiar with this artist, but I definitely want to be more familiar with this artist. I really liked the art in this book. It had grit, it had atmosphere, it had that dark kind of zone, that approach that should totally work for something like Hellverine. The basic premise is this. During Benjamin Percy's Ghost Rider and Wolverine runs, there was a crossover, and Wolverine got possessed by a demon. He became the Hellverine. Well, now there's a new Hellverine on the scene, and I'm not going to spoil it for you, though I'm sure right now on all of the sites you're going to see the spoilers, but even though I knew the spoiler, the reveal was still satisfying. However, if you don't know who the new Hellverine is, avoid all the spoilers and just allow this to develop organically. But a new Hellverine is out there. There's this government faction that is using, like, they found a way to use, like, demons and put them into dead soldiers. So there's these new characters that are introduced. They're kind of like the symbiotes mixed with Ghost Rider, mixed with like a Black Squad awesome, super efficient team of like Navy SEALs or Delta Force or something, right? I loved this book. It had a great pace to it. It had some really gnarly concepts, had some great violence and death, and it just kind of delivers on the hell spawn kind of vibe, right? I really did like this book. I actually wasn't looking forward to reading it because I wasn't quite vibing with Benjamin Percy's Ghost Rider run, nor really his Wolverine run, but Hellverine was interesting enough. It's got my interest piqued and my curiosity elevated. Then we've got some Blood Hunt tie-ins. Blood Hunt Black Panther issue number 1. This one's kind of a dud. Really, I would skip this if I was you. It doesn't really work. Only if you're the most hardcore Black Panther fan or you want to collect everything that's connected to Blood Hunt, have at it. However, it's just kind of alright. So T'Challa has been turned by Blade, who is the big bad of Blood Hunt. We obviously know there's something more to that, but they haven't really revealed it or dived too deep in, but we're only 2 issues in, but Blood Hunt's a 5-issue series, so we got to keep this moving. But this doesn't give you any kind of new information or anything like that. The basic premise is this. Black Panther is now a vampire, and he's trying to fight the urge to give in to his vampire nature, and he's still trying to be a hero to Wakanda and to the rest of the world. It's aight, it's decent, but honestly, I don't think it's really worth your time or your dollars this week. But, you know, if you want to check it out, check it out. But it doesn't do anything to really move anything forward for me. However, Blood Hunt Midnight Suns, issue number 1, I would recommend. And I would recommend it because of this. Amazing artwork from Herman Peralta. So the artwork is super solid, and I really do like it. Let me find you a good page. That's a decent enough page right there. But this is written by Brian Hill, who has written the most recent Blade run that was really good. And there are some seeds that were sown in the Blade run. How does it tie into Blood Hunt? You get a little bit more revelations, I guess, or connections to the Blade story here in this Midnight Suns book, and it makes sense because Brian Hill's doing it. He knows the character of Eric, of Blade. He knows where he's at, where he's been, and apparently where he's going. But this book doesn't really focus on him. It focuses on Johnny Blaze, Danny Ketch, and some others as they are bringing back together the Midnight Suns to find out what happened to Blade to make him turn into the big bad of Marvel's 2024 summer event. So I liked it. It's kind of like a continuation of sorts, if not a spin-off of Brian Hill's recent work on Blade. So if you like that Blade run, do check this out. I did pick up one of the variant covers because that's just slick and cool, but it's not the cover of the week. In fact, the cover of the week belongs to Spider-Boy number 7. It's a variant cover. It's the Symbiote Spider-Man cover that is done by, I don't know, it's obviously they're crediting John Byrne. David Baldion has done that. So it's a kind of a reference to the Spectacular Spider-Man, what was it, 101? I think Spectacular Spider-Man 101, John Byrne cover. That was one of my favorite covers of all time. This is an homage to it of sorts, and I really like that cover. So that gets the cover of the week. But the issue itself, y'all, I'm 7 issues into Spider-Boy, and I'm still vibing with it. I'm still loving it, and that is shocking and surprising to me. I like elements of Dan Slott's Marvel work. I thought his Fantastic Four run started strong, ended weak. I thought that his Spider-Man run was a little bit up and down, but for instance, Superior Spider-Man was great, and I honestly really dig on the worldwide Spider-Man run that happened right after he came back from Superior Spider-Man. So, Spider-Boy was a character that I never cared about, didn't want to get into, thought I would read the first issue of this series and be done with it, but it is so much old school Marvel fun. In issue number 7, we kind of bring to a head all of the threads, all the plots that have been building up since issue number 1. It all comes to a satisfying conclusion and sets up for what's to come. As long as this book maintains this vibe and this nature, I'm down for it. I absolutely love it. And a cover of the week as well. Then we got Night Thrasher here with issue number 4, the final issue of Night Thrasher. This series hasn't been the best, to be honest with you, but I am a huge fan of Night Thrasher, especially Dwayne's Night Thrasher. So I'm willing to give it a shot. It's going to be in my collection, so I can have it along with all the rest of my Night Thrasher and New Warrior books. But honestly, I thought the conclusion was decent. It was all right. It's not a great book, but I do like that it almost seems like the whole purpose of this book was to bring Night Thrasher fully back to himself within the Marvel Universe. And at the end of it, I really got that vibe. And y'all, I'm ready. Give me a New Warriors book. Give me a New Warriors book that has Thrash, that has Silhouette, that has Rage. Hell, I'll even take Speedball at this point. What's Firestar and Justice up to? What's Nova doing? Bring back the frickin' New Warriors, y'all. Let me tell you something. Namorita, bring her back. Let's have a New Warriors book, Marvel. Let me tell you why. Because I was perfect age when New Warriors first started. I was like 10, 11 years old. I thought that shit was so badass. So please understand that there are 40-year-old people here right now on this earth who have a nostalgic connection to New Warriors. So why don't you give us something new, but use those original characters and make the book for us? You're not going to get Night Thrasher or New Warriors over to 20-year-olds right now. You're not. I know that you're trying to do that, Marvel, but you've been trying to do that for a long time, and it's not working. Make a New Warriors book for us. What happens when the New Warriors grow up? Do that. Look at books like Tony Fleece and Tim Seeley's Local Man. Look at books like Joe Casey's, and I can't remember the artist right now, but look at the book like Blood Squad 7. Do something like that, but with the New Warriors for us. I mean, let's be honest. You're not going to make New Warriors fans. So why don't you just appease the ones that still exist? We may be few, but we're still here. Then we got Wolverine number 50, the final part of this new this the final issue of this current Wolverine volume and the final issue of this Sabretooth War. I haven't read any of these yet, but I've been collecting them up, so maybe this week I'll have time. Hopefully, I think I've carved out time in my schedule this week to read through all of these issues, and we can talk about them Sunday night on Rockin' Robbie Live. But I just want to point out that Frank Miller cover. Everybody was bitching and moaning about that Frank Miller Wolverine cover last year, or earlier this year, whenever it was. That's a Frank Miller Wolverine cover that I dig. I think that's pretty cool. Also, we got a facsimile of Avengers Annual, issue number 10, foil and regular, that's out. This is the first appearance of Rogue, Michael Golden artwork, Chris Claremont story. First appearance of Rogue. Believe it or not, I've never read this comic. Now I have it in my collection. I've never owned it, never had access to it, but there it is, because as long as you keep doing foil facsimiles, Marvel and DC, or anybody else, I'm the sucker that's going to get them, and the sucker that's going to tell other people to get them. All right, over at DC, we got Detective Comics 1085. We are in the final act of Rom V's Detective Comics run, which has been structurally very much influenced and inspired by opera. So it's got this large scope and scale, this sweeping, tragic, and romantic kind of vibe to it. And we are now at the crescendo, right? We're now at the point where everything is building up. Our hero has returned. He has found a little bit of inspiration. He's a different Batman than he was. He's taken all of these problems that were thrown at him. He's internalized it. He's died, buried, and has been resurrected again. And that's the Batman that we're getting here. And it's absolutely stellar. I love it. Plus, in the backup story, you get a Mr. Freeze story that is definitely chilling, and that pun is intended, but it's the first work on Detective Comics from Alex Packnadel, who I consider a friend and a homie, and I love that dude's work, and I loved his run here. Plus, Rom V, though, overall, just keeps delivering the goods. It's about to end. That's sad, but it's all been worth it, and this is going to be one of those books that we will be talking about for years and years to come. Maybe the same thing can be said about Penguin. Penguin issue number 10. I've made it 10 issues through Tom King's Penguin run, and I'm loving it. It's one of my favorite DC books right now. This book is mean, menacing, and brutal, and it really paints Oswald Cobblepot as a truly epic villain. Like a villain that's worthy of being scary. Penguin is scary in the pages of Tom King's Penguin book. Now, there are elements of this book that I didn't really quite know how I would vibe with as the series developed, but as the series developed, I just fell in line with everything. Everything seems to work. Batman, at first I thought Batman was being made to look kind of like a fool. No, there are other little bits and consistencies and nuances to this story that have shown through over the last few issues that make this my favorite DC book right now. It might be my favorite single DC book. This Penguin book has been gnarly and cool. That being said, all of the pieces are coming together for the ultimate climax of this book. I believe it's 12 issues, right? So we only got 2 more after this, but it's been working for me. It's been working solid. Tom King and, well, who is the artist? Is it Raphael or Rob De La Torre? Always get those dudes confused. It's Raphael De La Torre. The artwork has been solid, dark, menacing, atmospheric, all of that stuff and more. Then The Flash is here with issue number 9. I've heard rumblings that people don't like Simon Spurrier's Flash. You know what? That's fine. That like consistent old school Flash fans don't like that. That's fine. This book is challenging. It's difficult to comprehend at times. But man, it is worth the effort. Sometimes as readers, we have to put in effort. Now, if you want to be the pop culture consumer who doesn't want to put effort in, if you just want escapism, if you just want something that's silly and fun, or just kind of checking all the boxes, paint by numbers, doing what you want it to do, go for it. That's fine. Ignore this book. That's awesome. However, if you want complexity if you want a challenging nature to your story, if you want someone to take a concept and stretch it so far and wild and crazy that it's unrecognizable to most other work on that character, check out Simon Spurrier's The Flash. I have many times said I wish Grant Morrison had like a 5-year run on The Flash. Simon Spurrier is delivering in a very truncated fashion what I think Grant Morrison would deliver in a 5-issue run on Flash. This is great. I love it. In the last issue of Flash, I was so lost and confused, and I told y'all that. I was honest, because if anything, I'm honest, right? But I told y'all, I didn't really understand everything that was going on, and it was kind of losing me just a little bit, but man, this book is complex. Man, this book is challenging yet rewarding. This is a book that we have to work for just as much. Simon Spurrier's not spoon-feeding us. He's not allowing us just to get into this comfortable, like, repetitious, cyclical nature of a Flash story. This is something different. It's something bold. It's something that's dealing with the core of the concept of the Flash and the core of the concept of the Flash family, and I'm all here for it. I love it. Flash number 9, slapped. Then we got Green Arrow issue number 12. Josh Williamson brings to a close the whole first year of his Green Arrow work, and it ends a little bit sappy. It ends a little bit abruptly, maybe one could say, but at the same time, it's very satisfying to me, and I love that over the course of 12 issues, Joshua Williamson and company, along with Phil Hester and Izaki and other people, he's really reestablished Ollie's place in the DC universe, as well as the Arrow family, and put the importance on the legacy of Oliver Queen's Green Arrow. And it works. This works for fans of the Arrow show, this works for old school Green Arrow fans, and it works for new school Green Arrow fans, and I love it. Plus, so integrally connected to Absolute Power, the rise of Amanda Waller, just like Titans has been. It all is coming to a head at DC, and it feels like it's a plan, and it feels like Absolute Power is something earned. For instance, Blood Hunt at Marvel doesn't feel like an earned event. Absolute Power feels like an earned event, and I think DC has been very solid, very consistent, and Josh Williamson is at the front of that, especially with titles like Green Arrow. Then we've got Batman Dark Age, issue number 3. Y'all, I'm loving this book. First of all, Mark Russell is crafting a new iteration of Batman. Oh, roll your eyes. How many times have we seen this before, right? Oh, it's Batman, but it's a new universe. It's a different style. It's a different origin. It's a different vibe, but so much of that has still been there, done that. Mark Russell is introducing enough new elements to keep it fresh, to keep it exciting, to keep it engaging all the way through. And then you got Mike and Laura Allred on the artwork. Get out of here. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. When I reviewed this on the DC Sneak Peek on Rockin' Robbie Live on Sunday night, I mentioned there's so many artists from the 90s that you look at them today, you're like, you know, you don't quite have what you used to have, but I still see it there. For instance, bear with me. For instance, Frank Miller. Now, Frank Miller's obviously been working longer than Mike Allred in this industry, but there are other people that were contemporaries of Mike Allred in the 90s that I could point out and be like, it's not quite what it was, right? But we get that. People get older, they lose certain abilities, they struggle with certain things. We get that, right? You know, Frank Miller's going through a lot. Mike Allred, Laura Allred, their work has never stopped. It's never slouched. It's always been pristine, clean, and perfect. You get exactly what you expect from the Allreds, but they always give you a little bit more, a little bit of extra credit. It's almost like Mike and Laura are those like nerdy kids in the class that always get 110 on their reports instead of just like the typical 75 that the rest of us would get. So that's bullshit. You know, I say the rest of us. By the way, I always did really well on my research papers. Just so you know. Let's jump over to Image. That was a weird stretch. And from Image Comics, we have Grommets issue number 1. This is a new one that's written by Rick Remender, Brian Posehn, Brett Parson, with artwork by Marino, Denny Denicio. Yeah, that sounds right. Denicio. Let's just say that. All right, Grommets is a really cool slice of life story about a kid in the 1980s, right? He's a kid who moves around a lot. He's got some problems at home. He doesn't fit in with his peers and all that kind of stuff. But he's like a skate kid, right? He goes to a new school. He tries to make friends with these new skaters. It doesn't work out, but he meets this kind of like other nerdy kid, befriends him, and then the adventures continue. There's some really funny bits in this story. I loved the artwork, by the way. It had a nice, like, light, fun kind of vibe to it. And the story was on point. And the dialogue was pitch freaking perfect, right? It's got a little bit of a twist to it towards the end. I don't want to spoil, but it was a really enticing comic book that was lighthearted, that was fun, it was charming, and I'm really here for it. This was a really solidly crafted first issue. Let's see how this develops going further. Then we got Drawing Blood issue number 2. This is the re-release of the David Avallone, Kevin Eastman story with artwork by Ben Bishop. It's almost like a biography of Kevin Eastman's career, but with a lot of like leniency taken to it, right? But it's about this dude who created, or co-created, I should say, this major comic book that became this multimedia success, like TMNT, something like that, right? He has had a tragic loss. He is inheriting some bad problems because of that tragic loss. He's dealing with a lot of stuff, so it's kind of like Kevin Eastman's story, but fictionalized to the nth degree, right? I love this book. I think it's been fun. I read it a little bit when it first released over at IDW, but then I fell out of it. But so far, here on the re-release from Image, I'm taking my time, diving back into it, and having met Kevin Eastman, having done a panel with him, I vibe with this a whole lot more than I did back then, so I'm loving it. If you're a fan of Kevin Eastman's work, there is no reason why you're not checking out Drawing Blood. Then we got the Six Fingers, issue number 4 from Image Comics. Dan Waters, Sumit Kumar, Lee Lowridge on the coloring. What a crazy awesome book. So this is the book that's going along with The One Hand, a simple detective story, right? The One Hand is telling a murder mystery from the detective's point of view. Six Fingers is telling it from the killer's point of view, right? Both books kind of stand on their own, but they are so inherently tied together that you need to read both of these books. And the story has gotten more complex and more enriched as the issues progress. I am loving this book. It's going into territory that I did not expect. And I know that some people were saying, I don't know why this story has to be set in a futuristic neo-noir Blade Runner type setting, but based on the last issue of One Hand and now this issue of Six Fingers, it is necessary that these books are set in that time, in that vibe, in that genre, in that setting. I freaking love it. Six Fingers soars. This book, along with One Hand, I'm really excited to have them complete. There's one issue There's one issue of each left, and I'm really excited to read it all together. And I do believe that the trade paperback will have both books together at the same time. That's how this should be experienced. This book is awesome, and both Six Fingers and One Hand are one of the best books of the year. Then we got Universal Monsters, Creature from the Black Lagoon Lives, issue number 2. The Universal Monsters, Dracula by Martin Simmons and James Tynion. I loved that book. Creature from the Black Lagoon, written by Dan Waters and Ram V, with Matthew Roberts on the artwork and Dave Stewart on the coloring. I was really, really excited for this. This is billed as a direct sequel to the original Creature from the Black Lagoon, and it is a direct sequel, just set decades later, but it works. It ties into the first movie. We get a little bit more development here of our main characters and some other characters that are introduced in the second issue. The way it ties to the original film, the way they're elaborating a little bit more on the actual story, on the journey of our main character, I really dig it. So if you're a fan of those old school Universal Monster movies, y'all, Skybound and Image, they're killing it. They're doing a great job. Dracula was awesome. and Creature from the Black Lagoon Lives is continuing in that tradition. We also got a Frankenstein one coming out by Michael Walsh. Very excited for that. Then we've got World Tree here with issue number 10. I have a love-hate relationship with this book. There are moments where I absolutely love it. I loved it for the first few issues. It lost me a little bit. I reread the first trade paperback altogether. Loved it. Got into the second arc. Didn't like it for a couple issues. Loved it for a couple issues. And now we're back to, man, what's going on? Sometimes most of this issue, or most of this series, most of the issues of this series are just people talking about things. Now, we get that in Department of Truth, but the artwork by Martin Simmons is so riveting that it works. But here, it doesn't work quite as well. There's some really interesting concepts, but it feels like the story is slowing down so that James Tynion can just kind of waste time meandering around, developing new characters, re-elaborating on things that we've already been elaborating. I don't know. There's something lacking in this book. There's something in the pacing. There's something in the structure. It's not quite as exciting as I think it could be, but it's still decent and it's still okay. But World Tree number 10, we'll see where this arc goes, and then we'll judge it on that. Then we got King Spawn here with issue number 34. Another solid issue of King Spawn. Todd McFarlane is the sole writer of this title now. Jason Alexander's artwork, though, is great. We kind of bring an end to this first arc post-Spawn 350, where Granny Blake, is that her name? She's been kidnapped. Spawn is after it. After her, trying to figure out what's going on. And the last issue, structurally, was a little bit misguided, in my opinion, but now we're just getting right into that big finale, but a lot of setup for what's to come. I like this portrayal of Al without his powers, but still Spawn, still Al, still doing what he thinks he needs to do to save the day, to save the people that he loves, and King Spawn continues to shine, especially with the incredibly intense and gritty artwork of Jason Alexander. All right. Then we've got William of Newbury, issue number 1, a new one from Dark Horse Comics, written and illustrated by Michael Avon Oeming. I'm a huge fan of Michael Avon Oeming's work, and I loved this book. It gave me Usagi Yojimbo, Hellboy kind of vibes, right? So it's about this priest who's a raccoon. Actually, he's a monk. A monk who is a raccoon who fights demons, even if it causes problems with him and the church and his elders or something like that. But it's really delightful, very charming. I really got into it. Plus the artwork. Man, I already love Oeming's artwork, but this is like a level up for me. There's a little bit more P. Craig Russell influence, a little bit more Mignola influence here in this book. At times the story was... clunky's the wrong word, but at times the story did kind of make me have to like go, wait, what a second, wait, what just happened? But aside from that, it really did work for me artistically, and I love the whole vibe, and just the gist of this book was really working for me. I loved the artwork, I loved the spotting of blacks, I loved the line work. I liked it. I thought it was very charming, and I enjoyed it all the way through. Also from Dark Horse, we have Dawnrunner, issue number 3. This is Rom V and Evan Cagle, I believe. Evan Cagle. This is Rom V doing a big mech versus kaiju story, and there's really only one story you tell with that, right? Neon Genesis, Evangelion, Pacific Rim, they all have their different nuances, but for the first issue, Dawnrunner just felt like, okay, I haven't seen anything, this isn't anything different from what I've seen before, right? Issue number 2, they introduce a new concept to the whole kaiju versus mech story, and in issue number 3, they go further into developing that, and this is becoming a really interesting take on the whole mech warriors versus kaiju story. I really did vibe with this. I liked it. There are times where the art feels a little bit too constricted, and it doesn't let me clearly see what's going on. It doesn't clearly define some of the action at times in the artwork, but the story, the concepts, it's all there, and the artwork is good. The line work is crisp, it's clean. I just need a little bit more room for this art to breathe, and I think it would work. But as I say that, there are pages where that absolutely happens, and it has an emotional impact to the story. So Dawnrunner number 3, this is a book that keeps getting better and better. Then we have Armored issue number 1. This is a new one from Clover Press, and I picked it up solely because it has a cover by Nick Pitara. So I was totally down for that. I love this cover. I love Nick's work. Nick is super cool. I really appreciate him as a creator and as a homie. But Armored number 1, this is not Nick Pitara on the interiors at all. The interior artwork is done by Ishmael Hernandez, and I freaking love it. And the story is solid as well. The story is written by Michael Schwartz. It's about a kid who moves to a town, and in this town, there is a tower. And at this tower, there is a kid who has been killed. You get that in the very first few pages. A kid who died at this tower when this, like, demonic entity showed up, is responsible for his death. Now the parents of this kid have adopted another kid, and he finds out the mystery about this town, about this kid's death, and he winds up getting involved and coming across an ancient suit of armor that, like, it's basically like a Blue Beetle type thing, where the armor affixes itself to this dude, and now he's going to be some kind of a hero, right? So it's your typical hero's journey, first chapter type stuff, but it works. It was really fun. The art was great. The story was great. It had a great pace to it. It never felt bogged down by the weight of its own ambition. It worked for me. Armored number 1, I really liked that one. From Red 5 Comics, we have Blood and Fire issue number 1. The artwork in this book is great. It's a samurai tale about a samurai whose master is the brother of another dude, who their father is the ruler. The father dies, and now there's going to be conflict over who gets to rule in the father's absence, right? So it's from this one samurai's perspective. The story was a little bit clunky. It felt a little bit unclear. It didn't always quite work for me, and the lettering I thought was terrible. I thought the lettering was terrible, but the artwork was great, super solid, gritty, textured, a lot of use of screen tones and things like that. Probably digital, but it all worked artistically. Story-wise, though, it leaves a little bit to be desired. This is a book that has a lot of potential. We'll see how it develops. Then we've got Death... Oh, by the way, Blood and Fire has the smell of the week, though. Oh, that smells like a good comic and a good book. All right. Then we've got Death Ratioed. This is a one-shot from, is it AWA? Yeah, AWA Upshot. So AWA Studios bringing us a one-shot comic, Death Ratioed, written by Mark Russell with artwork by... Who's the artist here? The artist is not listed in the very beginning. Let's see if he's listed at the end. Lacey. Lacey is the artist here. Okay. I don't know if that's a he, she, or a they, but 100% Death Ratioed was a really fun comic. It's a satirical, humorous take, a fable, if you will. This is something that we're used to from Mark Russell, but it's a world... So this dude goes into a coma in the year 2024. He wakes up 22 years later. Civilization, society, way different, right? It's all been changed to be like social media, right? So everybody wears these collars, and people can thumbs up you or thumbs down you. If you have too many thumbs down, your head explodes and you die. So this dude is in this insane world that he recognizes a little bit from social media from his day, but the way that it has kind of influenced all of society and rebuilt society and civilization, it's wild. It's satirical, it's funny, it's charming, it's decent, it's really solid. Now, some of the themes are very much on the nose, but at the same time, there's a light touch to it where the book doesn't take itself too seriously, even though the theme is rather serious. So, once again, I love it. It's kind of like, if you love Not All Robots, this book is definitely for you. If you're a big fan of Mark Russell, definitely check that out. Do not miss it. Death Ratioed. Then we got Once Upon a Time at the End of the World, issue number 15. This is the final issue of Jason Aaron and Company's magnificent piece about love, life, and loss at the end of the world. This story has been about two people who meet in the apocalypse. They form a relationship. Their relationship blossoms and flourishes. Then it breaks apart. And now we're at the end of the story where they have to come back together, even though they don't want to save what little remains for everybody, right? What a super satisfying ending. What a super satisfying book. This has soared all the way through. I love the themes. I love the characters. I love the artwork. You got Nick Dragata doing most of the artwork here, but you got other people like Alessandre Timfinki and Leila Del Duca. The way this book has been structured with the art, with the story, with the narrative, it all freaking works. The characterizations are there. It's bittersweet. It's a bittersweet ending, but it's the appropriate ending for this book. This is one of the most honest, I should say, this is one of the most brutally honest stories I've ever read about love and loss and life. At the end of the world in particular, but just overall. This book was amazing. One of my favorite comics from Jason Aaron. So definitely check that out. Pine and Merrimack, issue number 5 from Kyle Starks and Fran Galen. This is the final issue of this book, and I freaking love this book. It's really cool. Kyle Starks has a way with character. He has a way with pace. He has a way with flow, and it works so well in Pine and Merrimack. There's a little bit of a convenient element to the ending here, but then it kind of twists back around by the very, very end and hopefully sets up more to come. This has been about a husband and wife private detective team that has uncovered this cult in their town that's trying to sacrifice these young women for power. They're coming up against it. We had some major things go down in issue number 4. So in issue number 5, it carries the weight of that and then conveniently kind of undoes some things, but at the same time still resonates with me. Pine and Merrimack was a pretty solid book. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers The Return, written by Amy Jo Johnson and Matt Hodson, Nico Leone on the artwork. Y'all, I love this. This is Tommy and Kimberly's kid as the new Green Ranger. The daughter of Rita is the big bad guy. This, like, if they ever tried to bring back any of the OG Power Rangers cast, this is your Bible. This is what you do. This is how you make it work. I watched that last anniversary special. It was all right. I did a panel with Amy Jo Johnson and David Yost talking about that, and they mentioned that they had a lot of pride in that. But I'll tell you what, they would have more pride if this is what they did. Amy Jo Johnson even mentioned how excited she was to me about this Boom book that was coming out. And I fell out of reading Power Ranger books a while ago, months and months ago. But this one has kept me engaged and enthralled all the way through. This is awesome. This is a Power Rangers reboot. Not a reboot, but if, you know, everybody wants to do this now, like The Fog recently, right? This is a sequel to something 40 years ago. This is a perfect way to do a sequel to Power Rangers. 100% with the original OG cast, how to make it work, to explain the absence of certain characters. But I freaking loved this book. And it's been my favorite Power Rangers book for years at this point. All right, Valiant. We got Rye. I used to always say Ray. Then I realized it was Rye. Some people still say Ray. What do you say? Is it Ray or is it Rye? I say Rye. Anyway, Rye, the Book of the Dark. So we are on the road to the resurgence of Valiant. Valiant hit a really bad point at like a year ago, right? They were only releasing like one book a month, if that. They weren't selling. They weren't generating any excitement. They weren't getting people talking about it. They weren't keeping me engaged. And there was a time where in the like early 2010s, they relaunched Valiant, and I was liking, a lot of that stuff. So now they have found some new financing, some new funding. They are now being published by Alien Books, but I feel like what we're doing here with the road to resurgence of the Valiant universe is just wrapping up everything to build up to a reboot. Because honestly, this is what the Valiant universe needs right now. They need a reboot. You need to reboot the Valiant universe. If that's not already your plan, please make that your plan. Start fresh, start new. Let's get some great creators on these cool characters, and let's start fresh and start new. We don't need to build on anything from the 90s. We don't need to build on anything from the 2010s. There's a new audience out there now. There's some cool properties here, some great characters. Let's do it. So I did check out this book because I skipped out on Faith Returns and the Valiants, and then I felt slightly shamed by Damien over at Sleepy Reader 666 because he read like the Valiants, and I was like, you know what, I skipped that just because I was over it. But you know, Damien, you're right. We need to give these books a shot, man. It's my job to read these books and let you know what I think. Ride the Book of the Dark wasn't bad. It was good. I was a little lost at first, but I got caught back up into the story, and by the end of it, I'm excited to see how this book is going to conclude in its second issue. Now, I'm not telling you that you need to go out there and check out this book if you've never read a Valiant book or anything like that. What I'm saying is this. I believe that they are wrapping up stories and threads, maybe even things that they already had in the pipeline before Valiant started struggling. Maybe this was done years ago. I don't know the insides, the in and outs of what's going on with Valiant, right? But I do feel like Alien Books is trying to finish off that previous Valiant universe and set up something cool. A relaunch, a reboot. That's what's happening. I think they need something completely clean, but maybe they're just giving us the ending that fans that have been following the Valiant universe since it relaunched in, 2012 or something, maybe they're trying to satisfy that, fill in what they've already had, and then set something up. But that being said, the book was all right. I thought it was cool. Also, speaking of Valiant, here's something that Alien Books is doing that I'm really appreciating. So out this week is the classic collection of Bloodshot. So y'all, you need to do more of these, right? The Valiant stuff from back in the day. Now, I was never, like when I was a kid, it seemed boring to me. It seemed dull. I never got into Valiant stuff when I was a kid. But I did get into the relaunch that they did in like I said, 2012 or something, right? But I've always wanted to go back and reread some of that old school stuff just so I know where these characters come from the origins, the genesis of these characters, if you will, right? And so I love these affordable. This is $30. It's the first 8 issues of Bloodshot. Well, it's 0 through 7. As well as Eternal Warrior number 5, Hardcore number 5, and Rye number 0. I'm assuming that's all tied in. It's reprinted very nice. It captures the original coloring, the original vibe and look. It smells amazing. It's really cool. It's a big chunk. I've always wanted to go back and do these. Now, Valiant they did try to like reprint these things back in the day, but they were kind of hard to find. They weren't kept in print. Keep this stuff in print. Comics, like movies, need to be preserved. They need to be kept in print for as long as possible. Give us a shot to try out Bloodshot and things like that. Also, from Marvel, we've got Hulk Grand Design available in a normal size trade paperback. The Treasury Edition, if you missed out on it, you missed out on it. It's done. It's gone. They're not going to reprint that. But now you've got it in a normal size trade paperback. So if you missed out on Hulk Grand Design by Jim Rugg, definitely check it out. This is one of my favorite comic books from last year. I freaking love it. It's Jim Rugg within 2 issues retelling 300 plus issues of the Incredible Hulk very succinctly and also very innovatively with the artwork. A use of collage, a use of different line styles. We're throwing in pop culture references that the Hulk, when he was at the height of his popularity, there's so much about this. It is a history of the Hulk done in so many interesting styles. Jim Rugg really outdid himself. So I'm going to tell you this. We are less than 200 subscribers away from 20,000 subscribers here on the channel, y'all. 20,000, that's a milestone. It's a big deal for me. So when we hit 20,000 subscribers, we're doing some giveaways. And we're doing a big, awesome, ultimate PCP mystery box for one of the winners. A not-so-mystery box, I should say. And one of the things included in that will be a copy of this Hulk Grand Design trade paperback with a bookmark signed by Jim Rugg that you can only get from him personally or from us here on our 20K giveaway. So, sub up if you haven't already. Check it out. And one of the prizes that we're giving away for our 20K giveaway will be Hulk Grand Design with a signed book plate from Jim Rugg. You don't want to miss out on that. So y'all sub up right now. Get all your friends, loved ones, and family to sign up. 20K, here we come. Let's do it within the next week or 2 so we can put together these prizes, these giveaways, and we can get that going, y'all. I really do appreciate all the support. That's what I read. That's what I thought. Let's recap. Hulk Grand Design out in trade paperback form this week. We'll be giving this away. Signed book plate along with it. We also got the Bloodshot Classic Collection. We need more of these Alien books. Please do. Rye Book of the Dark was all right. We need a reboot. Then we got Power Rangers Return #4, a great conclusion of what's been a really solid Power Rangers book. Pine and Miramax, a satisfying ending, maybe a little bit convenient in some parts, but still rocked on. Once Upon a Time at the End of the World, issue #15, one of the best Jason Aaron books I've ever read. Death Ratioed, a really great one-shot from Mark Russell and Company that is humorous, charming, and satirical. Blood and Fire, Smell of the Week, great art. The story was a little bit clunky. Armored, a great cover from Nick Pitara. Nick Pitara, did I say Mick? But a really cool concept, definitely worth checking out. The artwork was soaring there. Dawnrunner continues to distinguish itself apart from other Mech vs. Kaiju books. William of Newbury was giving me Usagi Yojimbo Hellboy vibes, and I really love the leveling up that Oming is doing for the artwork. King Spawn does what King Spawn do. World Tree's doing what World Tree do, which is kind of a inconsistency there. Creature from the Black Lagoon Lives really picked up the momentum. Six Fingers, issue #4. This story keeps deepening and going in directions I was not anticipating. Drawing Blood, if you're a Kevin Eastman fan, read that book. Grommets, a great slice of life 1980s teenage story. Batman Dark Age, the Allreds, Russell, a new take on Batman, but it's different and it's worth it. Green Arrow #12, a somewhat sappy conclusion to the first year of Green Arrow, but Josh Williamson is doing what he set out to do. Flash #9, challenging yet rewarding. Sometimes we have to earn it as well. Then we got Penguin #10, one of my favorite DC books. This book is mean and menacing. I love it. Detective Comics, we're nearing the end of Ron V's run, but we're nearing it in absolute perfect fashion. Then we got Avengers Annual #10, foil facsimile version. First appearance of Rogue in a foil version. Come on. Wolverine #50. Haven't read this yet, but a great Frank Miller cover right there. Night Thrasher. Not a great book, but you know what? I think it sets up a lot of potential for that character. Spider-Boy #7 brings a conclusion to the first arc of Spider-Boy. It's been a fun book. It feels like a classic Marvel book, and it gets the cover of the week by David Baladeon right there. Blood Hunt Midnight Suns is the only Blood Hunt tie-in that I would recommend right now, and I would solely recommend that to fans of Blade, and in particular, fans of Brian Hill's recent Blade series that was just wrapped up. Blood Hunt Black Panther was a little bit dull. It didn't really quite work for me. Hellverine #1, though, really surprised me. Avoid the spoilers if you can. Ultimate Spider-Man #5, diving into the origin of the Ultimate Green Goblin, and I'm loving it. But even more, I'm loving Avengers Twilight, issue #6, the final issue, a perfect, perennial, evergreen book from Marvel. Are you kidding me? That's awesome. We need more stuff like that, Marvel. Anyway, that's what I read. That's what I thought. What are you reading? What are you digging? Thank you so much for checking out the video. Let us know in the comments below what you are reading, what you are digging, and be sure to join us over at patreon.com/PCP if you want to help support the channel. I've been Rockin' Robbie Billups. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Station, keep on reading. Pop, pop, boom!